Hi, welcome to the She Moves Mountains podcast. This is your host, Kamala Murphy. Thanks for joining us today as we talk about some of the juicy stuff we women experience that makes this life journey truly amazing. You know, the nitty-gritty, the love, the loss, the falling down and rising up, the getting lost and finding our way again. To our hearts, our happiness, and to the awareness that we can and do move mountains. Thank you for joining. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the She Moves Mountains podcast. This is your host, Kamala Murphy, and today we have a really special guest, Dr. Rhoberta Shaler, who I was fortunate enough to meet in September of last year at the New Media Summit, which was a great opportunity to connect with podcasters. So I'd like to welcome you, Roberta, and then we'll share a little bit about your background.
Sure, I'm happy to do that, Kamala. My background is, well, I have a PhD in psychology, which is why I do what I do.
Yes.
But my background is that I certainly was raised in totally dysfunctional relationships. Therefore, you marry into a dysfunctional relationship, and then you learn a whole lot you didn't know. And then you move on with that great new learning. So that's why I do what I do in the world.
Well, that's great. So just for the audience, Dr. Rhoberta Shaler is known as the relationship help doctor, and she provides urgent and ongoing care for relationships in crisis. She particularly helps the partners, exes, children, and coworkers of the crazy-making, relentlessly difficult people that she calls hijackals. So I'm really excited about hearing more about that and sharing that with the audience. She helps those of us who have dealt with hijackals save their sanity and stop the crazy making. Even the United States Marine Corps has called on Dr. Schaeler for help. She's known as a relationship expert and speaker, author of 16 books. I had no idea it was that many, Roberta. It's like, wow. She also consults with clients worldwide through the internet, and she's the host of 2 podcasts. One is Emotional Savvy, the relationship help show, and the other is Save Your Sanity, help for handling hijackals. So again, welcome, Roberta.
Thank you.
Yeah. Because this is She Moves Mountains, we often talk about the mountains women have climbed or have overcome. And I know, having a PhD and developing this field of dealing with hijackals, you must have an interesting story. And I'd love to hear a little bit about that. And then go into a little bit more about the hijackals.
Sure. Well, yes, I did have to move mountains, many, many of them. I was raised in a family of 2 hijackal parents. I'm a fortunate only child. I'm glad they didn't share the wealth with others. And so I had to parent myself. And fortunately, because of who I am, I actually did a better job than most people can. And that helped me a great deal. And then I was on my way to medical school, and I found out back in the dark ages when this was a terrible thing, I found out I was pregnant and I was unmarried. And so I had to move a few mountains as my parents wanted me desperately to get rid of my daughter. And I did not get rid of my daughter. She is the first of 3 of my children, and I got married. I married a hijackal. I divorced a hijackal, and there I was on my own with 3 children. And because of hijackal nature, that meant that I wasn't going to get any help. I was going to be taken to court repeatedly on accusations that, of course, never happened, but were designed to use all my money and all my resources. And so I raised 3 kids on my own, working full-time, getting a PhD. So there were a few mountains that had to be moved, climbed, obliterated, driven through, whatever, in order to get to where I am now.
Yeah, yeah. And so how long have you been in practice? Just out of
36
curiosity.
years.
36 years. Wow. Wow. And did you start out knowing that you wanted to be in this well, not field, but the area of dealing with hijackals?
No, because I started out going on my way to medical school. I was going to be a medical doctor.
Oh.
And then once I found out I was pregnant, I couldn't imagine taking a child through medical school. It just didn't seem like a way to raise a child. So I shifted to do my doctorate in psychology. But I was always going to be in the helping professions because of what I went through.
Mm-hmm. I think that that's true for so many of us. The wounding, quote unquote, that we get or experience as kids sort of primes us for the fields that we are really destined to be in and
Well, they
are passionate
can.
about.
One of the things that we always have to have caution about is we have to have healed healers, not unhealed
Mm,
healers.
right.
So there are people who are drawn to the profession, but they don't do their work. They just like to
Mm,
help other people. So
right.
we have to make that distinction. I mean, people can walk through horrible things with you, but whether or not they can lead you out of them is another matter.
Yeah. Good point. Good point. Yes. So, one of the things I've been following you for quite some time now, and have just, I grew up in a dysfunctional home, um, but some of the things that you mentioned about having hijackal parents
Mm.
just were like eye-opening to me. So I was wondering if you would be willing to share some of either the traits or experiences that kids, growing up with hijackal parents might experience. So we can, say, oh yeah, that was me too.
Sure. One of the things is that as little people, we want validation.
Mhm.
We want validation that we're welcomed with joy, that people want us to be there, and that they are really interested in us. And hijackals don't have those gifts to give.
Mm,
They have children because, well, A, it probably happened. B, and then they were faced with being parents. And secondarily, they bring children into the world in order to have someone to dominate or someone to like them.
mhm,
And so it's very difficult to get validation from a hijackal parent. Well, how hijackal parents validate their children is when their children make them look good. For example, I happen to be very talented in music, so I could make my parents look good. I could play the piano or sing and win all kinds of awards. Now, they wouldn't come to hear me do it, but they would take the newspaper clippings and they would show them to other people.
mm,
So I was able to get validation from that. And of course, I did well in school. But they also validate you by when you agree with them and when you serve them.
mm,
And so you are really there to meet their ego needs and their demands for somebody who will be in service to them.
yeah.
And if you were raised that way, you were raised with like, how do I please them? How do I keep the giants happy? What do I do? And as little people, all of us, hijackal family or not, we are reading the cues and the clues all the time. How do I get these people to like me? Because I need them. I innately know I need them to survive. I can't move. I'm not like a horse or a cow. I don't get spit out of my mother licked off and then I leap up and jump around the meadow.
Right.
I need them. I can't move. I can't eat. I can't do anything. And we innately know that. So we're always looking at how can we get them to help us survive.
Mhm.
And hijackal parents, not very interested in giving you that information except in a very crooked way.
Yeah. One of the things that I think it was in a post that you had um, put up, there was something about where a parent will pit the siblings against one another. And when I read that, it was just like I had chills down me because it was like, oh, that's part of it as well. if all the girls are fighting over him or her, that he feels puffed up, So,
Well, there's that, and there's the other downside, Kamala, which is that they will have a golden child. They will have one child who can do no wrong, and then they'll have a scapegoat child who can't do anything right. And then they'll have a lost child that they just ignore completely. So in that pitting against each other, they will have different roles for different children often as well. So whoever gives them the most adoration in any particular moment is most likely to get some attention. And of course, there are a lot of things you can't adore a hijackal for, and little people understand that too. And they understand that that hijackal is pretty scary because they can turn on a dime. So little children learn to be anxious all the time, and they become anxiously attached or avoidantly attached when you look at attachment theory. And so we have real difficulties.
And you, in one of your interviews, I remember hearing you say that fortunately you knew from an early age that the parental units were crazy.
Yeah, they had a big problem. I used to look at them going, you're nuts, like who talks like that? One of the hallmarks of hijackals that I talk about a lot is incredulity. And any time that somebody does something that causes you internally to say, who does that? Who thinks that way? Who speaks that way? At that moment, you ought to go, maybe that's a hijackal, because that's our internal thing saying, that's not right. That doesn't happen in a world that works. That's not loving. That's not fair. That's not any of those things. And I used to have that feeling like, really? I was saying to someone the other day when they added that new care button on the emoticons on Facebook, could we have another one while you're doing us a favor of making emoticons? Could we have one that says, you're kidding, right?
Right.
And that's the way I kind of looked at my parents, like, there's no logic in what you're doing. You're kidding, right?
Yeah. Well, you were one of the fortunate ones, because I don't think most of us they had that, maybe the wherewithal or just the awareness that there's something off here.
Yeah, I was fortunate, and in that, how that kind of happened was that when I was 2, my mother went into a mental institution, and she was away for 1.5 years, and I was with my godparents. So I saw a different level of functionality. As it turned out, my godfather was also a hijackal, but it showed up in a different way because I could see peace, I could see love, I could see care, I could see focus on the child. So I had a very healthy experience with them as a small person. So when I went back to the hijackals, I was like, this is not the way it's supposed to work.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's great that was able to be a something that you could, this is how this feels, and not this.
Right.
Yeah. So I know that you also have said that as we've grown up, raised by hijackals, that oftentimes we become hijackal bait. I think that's the phrase that you use.
I'm very flattered that you've heard me speak so much.
Well, I paid attention. Seriously, it was like, this woman has something, and because it's so important. And I think, a lot of my listeners and my tribe are women who have dealt with traumatic experiences or the lack of care. So,
well, that's right. And what'll happen if you're raised by hijackals, you'll either, certainly there are gray areas in between, but generally you will either become a hijackal or you will become what I call hijackal bait. You've
Mm.
been really well groomed to put up with the antics of the hijackal, and they have groomed you to live in uncertainty and to not think you deserve much, not to think you are very important, that your needs come secondarily, and you've been taught to be a people pleaser.
Mm.
And so you just are already compliant, and hijackals recognize that in
Yeah.
you. Now, there is another kind of hijackal, Kamala. That's the one who likes a challenge. They like to find a strong person and
Mm.
then find their weaknesses and cut them off at the knees. So the general hijackal prefers one pre-groomed that is already going to accept their antics, but there is this other one who goes after it. So when I created the term hijackals, it was because too many people, in my opinion, were going to the internet, putting in what was up for them, and looking for a psychological diagnosis, a clinical term, and that's not fair, it's not right, and you can't do it. It's good that you informed yourself that there are people like narcissists, sociopaths, borderlines, psychopaths, but you can't really diagnose somebody else. So we needed a term to talk about the traits, patterns, cycles, behaviors.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I just wanted us to be able to talk about those things that we can recognize and do, make decisions about. So I define hijackals as people who hijack relationships for their own purposes and then relentlessly scavenge them for power, status, and control. And one of those pieces is the status piece. You know, that's where the strong person comes in. You
Mhm.
know, I was with a man who always, when we went, we were dating, and we went wherever we went to networking events or his work events, he would always say, "I'd like you to meet Dr. Rhoberta Shaler." And I said to him, "Why do you do that?" Well, he was borrowing my status because he was
Mm.
embarrassed that he had an associate's degree. And so it was just a big red flag. You know, we always have to be watching because they're everywhere. And
Right.
that was a big red flag for me. Oh, no, I don't think so.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're right about, people typing in, well, this is happening or that's happening. And narcissism seems to be really big right now. Everybody's a narcissist. And like, as you say, you can't, it's much better, I think, to have this term hijackal and recognize that we aren't you are, but I'm not the physician or the diagnostician. So, yeah.
Yeah, it is important. It's an important distinction. And there's a secondary reason why. If you decide that somebody has some kind of disorder, then you treat them as the person with the problem.
Right.
But hey, babe, you're in the relationship.
Right.
So
Right.
I want you to own the fact that this is a relationship you have with a person with these patterns, traits, cycles, and behaviors,
Hmm.
because you're in the relationship with them, whether that's your mother, your partner, your father, your sibling, your coworker. So it's not like they're this and you're fine.
Hmm.
No, you're in
Yeah.
there with them. So
Right.
something's going on that's attractive to you or attracting to you or magnetizing to you, and you have to figure that out.
Hmm. Hmm. Do you think that, as you said, if you've grown up with this and it becomes your norm, so would that be a way that you'd be more drawn to someone because it's familiar?
Oh, absolutely. You're comfortably uncomfortable and it's
Mm.
familiar.
Yeah.
And it's all very subconscious because when you meet a hijackal, they are like a peacock with the tail up, you know. They will do anything to attract you. They'll be
Mm.
whomever you need them to be, want them to be. They'll read you like a book. You will think you've died and gone to heaven. You've met your soulmate. They will give you what you want. They will say the right words. They will touch the right feelings. They will make the right promises. And then as soon as they've got you, like there's a whole chapter in my book, Escaping the Hijackal Trap, called the gotcha factor. As
Mm.
soon as they've got you, which is as fast as possible, these are the people who say, I know we just met, but I know I'm going to marry you and love you forever.
Oh.
Um, or I know we'll always be together. Let's have a baby. Or, whatever, let me move into your house, because of course nobody ever falls in love faster than a hijackal with no job. So, so,
So, yeah.
so that's the kind of thing that happens in this love phase, this hormone haze that you're in, and they take advantage of that and they love bomb you. Now all they're doing is gathering information to weaponize later, but you think that you have found this charming
The
person.
one.
Yeah, the one, and you found the one you're going to want to leave.
Yeah. Wow. So once they've got us, or yes, someone, and we recognize it, and we seek therapy, we go see you, and we can call from anywhere in the world because you can do this online. So what are some of the things that we then need to be, well, how do we heal ourselves? What are the steps we need to take to heal ourselves and
Well,
most
first of
likely
all, you have
detach and
yes. Well, first of all, of course, you don't want to believe it.
mhm.
And the first step is, oh, the poor person. And, as you've been listening to me, you've probably heard me say this because I say it so frequently. I'm going to say something, don't put on your compassion hat,
Mhm,
because,
mhm.
remember, particularly we as women, we're hardwired to nurture and nourish other humans.
Yes.
That's what we do. And so we want to put on that compassion hat and say, oh, that poor person, they had such a terrible life. And you're going to live in that compassion space, and you're going to put up with what they do and say because you feel so badly for them. But that wonderful saying, not your circus, not your monkeys.
Yes.
You didn't create it. You can't fix it. You didn't break it. You can't fix it. Not your circus, not your monkeys.
Yeah.
So get that out of your head first. Like, they came to you in this condition. You did not create it.
Right.
And you
Right.
can have compassion for anybody that they went through something that created them in that way. However, you have to have self-compassion, and you have to care about how you are being treated and how you are being spoken to and how your children are having relationship modeled. And at that moment, you have to say, no, it's not about anything except our emotional and physical safety.
Mm.
We are moving beyond this. You have to get yourself away from feeling like, oh, I should have done so much more. If only I were more patient or less demanding or, whatever. Don't beat yourself up over it. When you come to this realization, you have to just say, what is in the best interest of the well-being of myself and my children?
Right. Right.
Stay focused on that. How do I get healthy? How do I make sure my children are healthy? And then how do I release myself from all that created my willingness to enter this relationship? A lot of the work that I do with people, and, yes, it's slow, is to be able to say, where did you get this?
Mm-hmm.
What
Mm-hmm.
happened to you? What was going on? What allowed this to be acceptable to you? And how do you know that you can recognize it immediately, that you don't walk around with your rose-colored glasses so you don't see the red flags? You got to whip those rose-colored glasses off absolutely now. I mean, that will never serve you well in this life to be looking at it through rose-colored glasses,
Mm-hmm.
because you
Mm-hmm.
will miss all the red flags. So you need to see the red flags. You have to know why they were attractive to you. You have to know why you were attractive to hijackals, and then heal those pieces so that you go on knowing that no more hijackal bait. I can
Right.
see them coming, and if they open their mouth in my presence, I can go, oh, no, we're not having one of those.
Yeah.
So we get very clear.
Yeah. And so I'm wondering, are there some particular things that just feel like, well, you want to stand on the mountaintop and just share with women? It's like, this is what I need to say to you. Is there something like that you're?
Well, yes, there is. And that is that if you feel like someone is always belittling you, demeaning
Mm.
you, dismissing you, discounting you. And every now and again, when you get really upset, they come and they try to be your hero. Know that you're in a situation that is creating a trauma bond.
Ah,
And you don't
ah,
want to be in that situation. They create your misery, then they scoop along and try to be your hero, get you out of the misery. And that's the creation of the trauma bond. That's what happens to parents and children.
mhm.
That's what happens to partners. So if you're kind of waking up and smelling the herbal tea and finding it smells like hijackal, right? It's important to realize that there was a part of you that responded to, I want this person to like me. I want this person to approve of me. I want this person to validate me. And
Mhm.
if you didn't have that validation from your parents, you're still looking for it.
Yes.
And they know that. So when they love bomb you, they validate you and then they whisk it away. So screaming from the rooftops, yes. If you're looking for validation from other humans, learn to validate yourself.
Yeah.
If you're looking for love from other humans, which is a wonderful thing to receive, absolutely. I'm not suggesting you shouldn't be looking for it,
Right.
but know first that you have self-compassion and you love yourself and you treat yourself as though you matter on a
Mhm.
daily basis and that you're living from your values. Many of the people that come to me, Kamala, have not had a good look at what they value because they've been so busy trying to value what the other person valued in order to get validation.
Yes.
And when they
Yeah.
examine their life, they realize that, well, I have never really lived from my own values because I haven't explored what they are and why they're important to me.
Right.
And so you don't have a firm vision of your life then, what you'd like your life to be,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
you are thinking about how you will fit into a mythical life with another human.
Right.
And you need to know you first. So if you have to shed a hijackal, it's an exercise in self-worth.
Yes. I love that. I love that because it's, having been raised with them, that's you, it's always about the other, the other, the other. And it's so important to, you know, it's a cliche now about the air mask, but it's so true. It's so true. Yeah.
Well, it is. And if other people are always worth more than you are, more important than you are, someone that you should be caring about more than you care for yourself, that's not going to lead to the three must-haves of a healthy relationship that I talk about. In fact, in my podcast, Save Your Sanity, 2-3 weeks ago, I did an episode called The Three Must-Haves for to be in a healthy adult relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And these are for any healthy adult relationships, parent to child, to adult to adult in any circumstance. You must have equality,
Mm-hmm.
reciprocity, and mutuality. And if you don't have those three things, move on.
Right. Right.
Maybe you'll spend some time seeing if you can establish those things. That's always a good thing to do. But if you can't establish them and the other person is not interested in the ability to talk well together, to get close, to have emotional intimacy,
Mm-hmm.
which is not available with a hijackal,
Right.
then you need to know that you're not in a healthy relationship.
Yeah. Would you say that if you know or you notice that you are not putting yourself first, like ever, that would be one of those big red flags? Yeah. Okay.
Because if you don't think that there are some times that you deserve to come first in life, you're always going to be second,
Yeah.
if not third or 24th,
Right.
right? And in any relationship, there are three entities. There are two me's and a we.
Mm.
And if you're in a romantic relationship, that stool has to have all three legs, two
Right.
me's and a we. There are going to be times when we do what's in the best interest of one of the me's. There are going to be times when both me's have to give a little to do what's in the best interest of the we.
Of the we.
And
Right.
when you're in a hijackal relationship, it's always going to be one me
Yeah.
that's winning. So it's really important to understand these three must-haves of the healthy relationship, and then to realize that in a relationship, you have to have the versatility and skill and willingness to sometimes realize that in order to grow and enrich the we that we sometimes can't have everything our way.
Right. Right. Well, I'm going to have to get that podcast and link it to the show notes so that people can listen to that. So there's usually one question that I like to ask my guests, and that is, if you were able to whisper in the ear of your younger self, what would you whisper to her?
You were right. You know, when you're raised in that situation, even though I had all the intuition, I had the words for it, and I could tell them they were nuts, deep down, because of what happens to us before we have full brain development, we believe the emotional charge that we got before the age of 5.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
it took me many, many years to actually realize I had it right.
Yes.
And that they were wrong about me. And that's the important thing.
Yeah.
You know, for me, if I would have been able to validate what I saw when I was 9 years old and say, okay, you walk away from this. But no, I mean, 9 years old, that people have been accustomed to for the first 5 years of wanting something, you keep thinking, maybe I can adjust and they'll like me. Maybe I can change and they will approve of me. One of the big things, Kamala, that I recognized, I nursed both my parents to their deaths at home. My mother died second. And after she died, I was doing a little project. Well, it was a huge project, actually. It was all my photographs and all my parents' photographs. And I made albums for my 3 children. And so I finished the task. And at that time, I owned a yoga and health retreat. So I was sitting on the yoga room floor, 1,100 square feet of wonderful windows and skylights and all.
Right. Right.
And I decided, I've got all these photos out here. I'm going to go and see if there is any evidence for what my mother used to tell me. And she would say, it's a good thing you're smart because you're fat and ugly. And so I thought I'd go looking for evidence of fat and ugly. Well, I may be delusional, but I didn't see any.
Right.
And so I was sitting there, Kamala, and I thought, what is this really about? And after sitting there for a while, I realized that there was a part of me. I didn't like my mother. She was racist. She was nasty. She was bad-mouthed. She was, so many nasty things. But I realized that there was a little thread. I was sitting with her 3 days before she died, and I said to her, I had my hand on hers, not that she'd ever hold mine. I have, and I said, Mom, you've never told me that you love me. And she looked at me and she went, I know.
Oh.
So as I was sitting there thinking about this, I realized that question came from the small part of me that was still waiting for her approval. But where the real light bulb was, I was waiting for the approval of someone of whom I didn't approve.
Whoa. I just got chills.
And I think many of us, particularly, we're speaking to women, I think many of us are holding out for the approval of people we don't approve of. That child part of us that looks to adults to tell us we're all right, until we heal that part that says, no, I can validate myself, I can approve of myself, I can figure those things out, is still waiting.
Yes.
And that's the piece that needs healing. Otherwise, we'll keep going, saying to people, how do you like me so far? Am I okay? There's a part of us that's asking that.
Yes.
So that was a big moment for me.
Yeah. And that's amazing. And it's so true that, we're looking outside and need to come inside and learn to love us, not needing anybody else's.
Right.
2 cents. Because then, it would have been 2 cents.
Yes. Well, my mother's 2 cents wasn't worth even that.
Yes. Well, I want to thank you so much, Dr. Rhoberta Shaler. I don't want to just be calling you Roberta. Thank you so much for being with us today. I found this so valuable and enriching and eye-opening And I know that my listeners will as well. So.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be with you, and I'm always available to talk with people, or they can listen to the podcast and learn more.
Yes, and I'll have both podcasts and your website, because I know you have an ebook about the hijackals and some of the traits. So we'll have
how to spot a hijackal.
Yeah, which is just. Again, I'm just getting chills. I'm so excited about this because it's so important, and it's not really spoken about enough, I don't think. So, all right. Well, again, thank you. I'm sending love to our listeners today and hope you have a great week. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the She Moves Mountains podcast, coming to you every week. If you're a woman who wants to move mountains in your own life, please make sure to subscribe or follow this podcast. And if you've laughed or gotten teary or smiled knowingly, thinking, oh yeah, that's me too, please go ahead and rate the episode with 5 stars. It'll be a feel-good thing to do. Thanks a bunch. Lots of love and blessings to you. This is Kamala signing off. Until next week. Take care.